Welcome to Staking Mondays. Today on a Tuesday, I'm your host, Marian Walter. I'm head of strategy at Stake Rewards. And today it is my pleasure to welcome my extra special guest, Alex Forshaw, who works for the Ant Labs and the Terra Classic community. Alex has 12 years of hedge fund experience as a senior analyst, primarily focused on the global consumer internet sector. In late 2021, he transitioned to a full-time DeFi researcher and trader. After UST's DPEG and Luna's collapse in May, Alex joined the Terra Rebels. They are a decentralized organization that aims to revitalize the TerraClassic ecosystem. Yesterday, Alex published a white paper for a new proposal to restructure TerraClassic's USTC, and I'm excited to have the first exclusive interview on this here on Stake Rewards. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you, Marian. Very excited to be here. Shout out to my Jade and all my other fans in the Terra Classic community. Where should we start?
Yeah, I wanted to start right away with how you got involved with the Terra Classic recovery effort.
Sure. So I got really interested in Luna UST probably in last fall. So I would say, almost exactly a year ago, I guess. And that was at the same time that I was transitioning full time into the company I work for today, which is called End Labs, and it's basically a company that tries to link DeFi capital with like real world business, like loans and business yield. So I was getting very into crypto from like a professional level, as well as kind of applying my more TradFi like knowledge base to try to analyze these different crypto protocols. And Terra Luna was one of those that just really stood out from the beginning in so many ways, as just a completely unique asset to crypto that I think was always very poorly understood. Was definitely very poorly understood by me because I was one of the people who got wrecked in the May crash, and because I'm like a super analytical person, I always I'm really wrong in something that I had very high confidence in. It always makes me really, really exhaustively analyze kind of what went wrong and like make sure that to like not let that happen again. But at the same time, there were so many things about Terra that I think made it really special, and made it something that it like was worth preserving if it could be safely preserved, if that makes sense. So like the decentralized, the using BTC, which is uncensorable collateral, to back a stablecoin token. That basically made Terra like the first really independent stablecoin, like a stablecoin that was just independent of any government, independent of like truly deregulated, basically. And so I thought that was really cool and really worth preserving if it could be. But first I had to really figure out every single little thing that went wrong with it. So I did a bunch of work on that, and I'd say by late May, I kind of had like the very basic outlines in my head of the proposal that kind of was published yesterday. And I shopped it around to a few kind of crypto Wall Street types and didn't get anywhere. And their biggest comment was, well, we can't stake any tokens on this network, so like it's a worthless network. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, yeah, that's a great point. So then I fell into this Discord that somebody had posted a link to from the Terra Agora, and it was the Terra Rebels Discord. And it was very clear from a really, really early on listening to, especially Tobias Anderson and Ed Kim, who are the two technical leaders of the Terra Rebels. It was very clear that at the leadership level there was a very different this wasn't just like a random bunch of people getting together in Discord. There was some like very high intellectual horsepower going into this effort. And so that interested me immediately. And then when Tobias gave his first presentation, as far as I know, the first public AMA in that Discord, he basically laid out the very basic plan of how proof of stake could be restored, even though Terraform Labs had disabled it ostensibly as a safety measure, as a network safety measure. And when I heard from him that proof of stake could be restored, even though it had been like completely crippled and taken away, then I thought, oh, well, like then my crazy idea that fell on its face to kind of crypto Wall Street people, like maybe it could actually work if this gets done. So I'm a very weak kind of coder, but I have a lot more kind of expertise on the financial engineering sides, and I knew that if the stablecoin or some replacement for the stablecoin were to be relaunched, then I would almost certainly have a lot to offer that effort. So I immediately kind of plunged into that whole effort and kind of participated where I could, but my main focus was always on sort of restructuring or reconfiguring the stablecoin in a way that was legally sound, like Terra Rebels people wouldn't get sued if it was restructured. It was also like as sound as possible to like the community for like dilution purposes, or like coming up with the capital needed to back stablecoin or a stablecoin like instrument. Operationally sound in terms of like actually like talking with people like Ed and Tobias and seeing like what could actually be implemented on a technical level, and then all these other, you know, checking all the boxes that you need to check. And once staking was, so then fast forward like 2 or 3 months to like late August when proof of stake was restored to the network. That I think to institutional investors was a huge game changer for Terra Classic, because at that point, but before staking was restored, it was like there was not like one token, one vote. There were like 300 million tokens on the network that had all the votes on a network that was like 6.9 trillion tokens. So it was a lot more like a dictatorship of everybody from before the crash who called all the shots. And if you had gone out and bought a lunk token yourself, you would literally have nothing. You couldn't do anything with it. You couldn't stake it. But once Ed and Tobias and the Terra Rebels restored proof of stake, that changed. And so that like restored the governance premium to the network and was a catalyst, I think, for this really big run up. And then once that was done, the community kind of plunged into this, you know, productive debate around kind of what the logical next step should be. And so my proposal was, which I worked very closely with Ed, Edward Kim, and Max Bryan on, is kind of one of probably 3 proposals that I think will come out that will be sort of kind of determine what direction the community goes, or there might be more. I don't know. I know of 3 specific ones that I think are pretty highly developed.
And so this went live yesterday. Tell us a little bit about what is in the proposal. Just walk us through on a high base level.
All right, I'll do my best without being you know, a professor, boring professor, because it's like 20 pages long, and I think it was way too long in hindsight. But basically, I guess the proposal says, okay, we've identified these pools of assets on the network that belong to various parties that we think we can basically Robin Hood these assets and move them. You know, they were involved with let's say parties heavily associated with the crash that are kind of in the process of winding themselves down, and if we could like repurpose those assets to be the collateral for a successor kind of dual token to the dual token mechanism that's better, then that would be a great thing to do for the community. And it would be, if it was done right, it would be a really unique asset to bring to the crypto ecosystem, right? Because when people hear stable coins, they automatically glaze over. They think this is like the most boring topic in crypto. But stable coins are actually like this really complicated market where all these different stable coins like DAI or Frax or USDC or USK, which is the new like Kujira Cosmos stablecoin. They all kind of try to fill out these different markets, and so it's not enough to just have like a successor stable token or fungible token. Algorithmic fungible token is what I call it, because I think what we're doing does not fit into the stablecoin category and should definitely not be marketed as such ever. But I think so. I guess the paper attempts to say, okay, like here's how we would basically take these assets that are scattered around and do a bunch of financial engineering and then come up with a new product for the community that's competitive, that's compelling, that has a good chance of seeing really strong adoption by the broader crypto market because it's doing something unique. So at a very high level, it says, okay, we can basically take 300 billion LUNC tokens or so that are already community owned, that are sitting in smart contracts. We could mint or not mint another, I'd say 400 to 600 billion, depending on a whole bunch of variables. So this is where the whole minting question comes in, which is technically not necessary in order to do this. And I'll get into that later. But basically, we have 300 LUNC that's sitting in the Oracle rewards distributor right now. We don't have to. We can take that and repurpose that if the validators approve it in governance. We can use that as like the basic collateral for a successor to the old dual token system, because we know that in the prior system, Do Kwon and Terraform Labs seemed like they were targeting maybe a 20% collateralization level of outside collateral like BTC for their stablecoin, and that clearly was not enough. Like that was too aggressive of a strategy, and it seems pretty clear that anything that tries to be a successor to that needs to have significantly more reserves than that if it's going to be genuinely safe and if it's going to have market credibility. So when I was talking to institutional investors in like May, their consensus was that a bare minimum, if you're going to go with a decentralized collateral like BTC that's pretty volatile, the bare minimum threshold you need for market credibility and safety would be about 50%. And so I settled on a 60% or so level as kind of what I think would make sense, just basically based on those conversations, and that would have to be tested in a much more rigorous way. But that was how I got to this kind of 60% collateralization level for our new token.
Maybe on that note, what about the problem that in general, such type of an quasi stablecoin, it's not a stablecoin, let's call it quasi stablecoin for simplicity reasons, it will only get under stress in times of all overall market distress. And then at this stage, the value of the collateral will be also very much distressed. So it's like the mechanism itself, it only needs to work in the worst cases. How do you deal with that problem?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So Terra in the old version that blew up, had its BTC reserves. That was like one layer of defense. And it also had this very experimental and sophisticated capital control system that was kind of this ongoing experiment, and it clearly didn't work. That clearly needs a bunch of changes, but those were the two really big stability mechanisms that Terra had before. So if you were going to go with a version that tries to improve that, you should have significantly higher reserves. You should have better capital controls. And you should also not do the anchor protocol, which that I think was actually Terra Classic's biggest flaw. Like that was the thing that killed it more than anything else, because it basically gathered this huge amount of assets that could like run out the door at any time, and was getting like unsustainably high yields, because those yields were just sort of set by whoever was controlling the anchor protocol. So probably in very close coordination with Terraform Labs, not like the market, not like Aave or Compound or these more decentralized DeFi protocols that did not have these problems, partly because like they let the market set their interest rates, whereas Anchor just kept a really high rate when everybody else's rates were going down, and that caused this huge amount of money to flow into Anchor, which then all ran out the door at once, and that blew the system up. So we would have so our design would be way safer on that level, but then you still have the question of like, okay, let's say you have $2 billion worth of fungible token and $1 billion worth of BTC, and then you have however many $1 billion of LUNC. Those are like your two collateralizations for the quasi stable coin. What happens if like a nuclear bomb goes off somewhere and all crypto is down 70% the next second, and suddenly the amount of crypto backing your stable token, this is just like the most ridiculous edge case scenario, but it's one that the protocol needs to be able to deal with if it happens. So what happens if like, suddenly all your crypto collateral is down at least 70%, and you just have this giant amount of bad debt now that was previously backed by all this, all the crypto money that you had. So we have a system that deals with that, and basically the way it deals with it is we have the reserve, the BTC reserve is broken into tranches, what we call them, and each tranche buys back the stable token at a successively lower price, but it also re-racks itself based on price changes in BTC, basically. So if BTC dropped by let's say by 70% in an instant, right? You, instead of having 10 tranches with $500 million total, like 50 of BTC, you now have $150 million of BTC, and so only the bottom three tranches would be filled with BTC. So those would target repurchasing the stable token at like 15 cents, 25 cents, 35 cents. So those would be the levels at which the reserve would engage and buy back the quasi stable coins, so that the idea being that at some price the protocol is able to completely retire all of the stablecoin quasi stable coins in circulation, thus making a death spiral impossible. Did I go way nutty, Professor, on that answer, or was that comprehensible?
So I think, it is comprehensible for our audience to dig in. Maybe, I mean, what you're doing, let's put on the view of traditional finance here, is this trying to restructure an over-indebted system, right? And now you need to assign who gets the benefit of assets and who is basically being damaged by his assets being written off. How did you go about weighting these different pros and cons? Because from the comment section, we get a lot of questions around the minting, whether things could be different and so on. Please walk us through this decision model that you have.
So let me think here for a second. The key so in terms of like really the minting, which is somewhat optional, but at the same time, ultimately the minting is not absolutely necessary to have a BTC backed a quasi stablecoin in circulation. It can theoretically be done only with existing assets, but what you do when you do that is you basically nuke all of the current USTC holders if you were to just say we're gonna basically write you off and we're not going to give you any compensation for the lost for like the stable tokens that you had. That to me is no different than what Do Kwon did when Do Kwon kind of walked out the door in mid-May or mid to late May and said, I have a new chain. We're kind of backdating everything to before the crash started. And then they ended up changing it. So they didn't totally do that, but they kind of still did. And that to me was fundamentally, that felt fundamentally unfair. I experienced that myself because I had bought significantly more LUNC on its way down. And if you're one of those people, you got absolutely torched. And that always felt like, so that always felt kind of unfair. And also, I guess from the perspective of like growing the community or like creating a narrative that's really, really good to people outside the community. It's like if you diluted yourself a tiny, like 3% more, you could like, and kind of extended a helping hand to these people, a lot of whom were crushed pretty badly themselves. You create an amazing market narrative, an amazing kind of like we're not just in it for ourselves. Like we're actually like putting back together what was broken before. And you're bringing on however many tens of thousands of USTC holders there were who, instead of being, very disappointed people, you're bringing them into the community at a very low cost. Like those are additional users who will be like happy to use whatever services you build next. And that's actually, to me, from a business side, that's actually like a very cheap customer acquisition cost, right? So I thought it was a very clever way to approach that, but that part of the minting like has not been received well, and that might ultimately not be able to won't pass governance.
Maybe just to simplify again. So who's bearing the brunt right now in your proposal? And who is
sure. So all these numbers can be like toggled to change the burdens. But basically, right now, if you are a LUNC holder today, which I am, I'm pretty much completely an LUNC personally between the two. If you're an LUNC holder today, you would get diluted. I'd say the realistic range would be like 4 to 8%, 4 to 9%, depending on. So it's 7% and then like the example numbers that I used. And in return you have a stable coin like token that has significant circulation, kind of like almost $200 million worth of initial circulation, which is actually important, because if you like, I could start a stable coin tomorrow with like $100 in circulation, right? I could write some code, I could fire it up, I could buy $100 of Bitcoin. I could mint $200 of tokens. Boom, I have a 50% collateralized stablecoin, right? But who cares? Like, nobody would want to use that because it's not recognized or understood everywhere. And so basically, if you're going to launch a stablecoin like thing, there is a critical mass that you need to hit in order for it to have like adoption credibility, which I think is around 200 million US dollars in circulation. So I kind of geared the numbers in terms of like how I could have maybe a 60% backed stablecoin like token that could have about 200 million US dollars worth in initial circulation, because that would make the adoption rate much faster. And
where do you deduct the 200 million threshold from?
Why do I think 200 million is like the magic? There's no way to prove what that number is. It could be 150. It could be more. I think once you hit a market cap of around that, a lot of logistics get easier, like in terms of applying to a centralized exchange to list it. A centralized exchange is always going to be it's going to be a much faster conversation if you already have like 150 million plus market cap. Like what the centralized exchanges don't want to do is let anybody list like $5 million of scam coin, of some scam token that they minted. Like, they don't want to be known for like listing these rug pull tokens, because that tarnishes their brand. But if you clearly have a big community and have a really vocal, a big support base, then you've already cleared those credibility hurdles, I think.
It's basically the asset that you wield as a new upcoming.
And it makes it easier to expand the cross-chain liquidity that you need to like further grow the adoption of it, right? So that was something I did a really bad job of explaining in my paper, but yeah, like we could instead of doing an equivalent 97% burn of USTC, we're using a new token, but we could burn 98% of it and instead, or 98.5%, and then we'd start out with like 100 million of stable token in circulation, backed by 60 million of BTC, which we would have gotten totally from like community-owned assets already. We could do that, but in that event, we wouldn't be giving USTC holders anything, which to me feels very unfair, and also kind of like an unforced error in terms of, or like a missed opportunity in terms of marketing and narrative, and bringing them back in from the cold, and also the adoption curve would be significantly slower if you're starting out at 75 or 100 million as opposed to 175 or 200 million.
So in terms of being the devil's advocate here, would you say, or how much would you say has the amount of time that has passed since the depegging and the whole meltdown of the original Terra project until the aims to repeg things right now has cooled off community interest? So how quickly, let's say, put it this way, how quickly is your asset, meaning the community engagement, deteriorating over time?
The community engagement, I'd say, so this gets into a separate kind of mud fight around the burn tax, which I'll try not to get too sidetracked on it, because it's its own contentious kind of debate. But basically, I'd say during the whole re-enabling staking, and after that, I'd say, community engagement has been very, very strong. I mean, and it has been growing very steadily. I think it's hard to do these apples to apples comparisons across chains, because different chains like they count different things as transactions, and the way you like get paid rewards can count differently. But I think if you looked at Nansen.ai's numbers, Terra Classic as of a month, maybe let's say a month and a half ago, had significantly more like genuine daily active unique wallets than Avalanche did, which is a network that's 5 or 6 times LUNC's market cap. And that interest went up until the burn tax was instituted. It was basically a transaction tax, like a Tobin tax, to try to deflate the supply of LUNC, and I think it's safe to say that tax did not deliver kind of what it was supposed to deliver in terms of kind of what it was expected to deliver, let's say. So that's kind of pushed the narrative now to, okay, like what is the burn tax is fine. We're trying it out. Like the community overwhelmingly wanted it. Now probably not so much, but in any case, like what's like the logical next path? Yeah. And so the next path was always some kind of successor to the old, stablecoin Luna model. And what is that going to look like? And so I think, on-chain transactions went down a lot. I think transactions maybe like 80% plus, which you'd expect, right? You'd expect a really big drop in transaction volumes to happen as a reaction if your tax is going up by like 1,000%, which is what it did. So like I think the community engagement is, if anything, it's like as high as it's ever been in terms of like if you look on Twitter or anything like that. But in terms of like transaction volumes, it's down. It's definitely down a ton on chain, and it's probably down a little bit on the centralized exchanges, which can basically batch a huge number of trades into one on-chain trade, and so they can kind of avoid 95 or 99% of the tax.
What made you pick BTC exclusively as collateral, as opposed, for example, to ETH?
Because BTC, it's the most decentralized in terms of, no one can ever like take your BTC away or sanction, or I guess blacklist your address. I guess they could still refuse to accept your address, but it's basically 99% uncensorable unless every miner in the world colluded against you or something. But it's effectively uncensorable, and it's also much less correlated to all the like Ethereum or any Avalanche or any competitor to Ethereum. Those are all smart contract L1s, so those all tend to be leveraged to the same DeFi things that outperform a ton during crypto bubbles and then underperform a ton during crypto crashes. So all those Ethereum and Ethereum competitor networks, they make their money on DeFi activity, which is always, it booms very hard and then it busts very hard. BTC doesn't have that issue because it's not really smart contracts. It's much more like digital gold. It's like inert. So it always outperforms during crypto bear markets, which is what you want to see in the crypto, your choice of collateral, especially because the LUNC is your other really big source of collateral, and that's probably doing, best case scenario, that's probably doing doing the same thing Ethereum is doing in a crypto bear market, which is it's probably going down a lot. So you want your collateral to have as much different characteristics as possible as like your native, your LUNC. But you also don't want it to be like dollars or gold or some like physical asset, because those are completely regulated by the government. Those could be censored at any time, and the government could literally pull the plug on your protocol tomorrow morning and by saying you can't redeem this money if like your currency peg is under stress or something, and you would have nothing to defend your currency peg with, and you'd have a death spiral on your hands, which we can't risk, especially in a regulatory environment like this. So you have to have collateral that your protocol can completely control.
What was your process of assessing the risk of regulation? So when I was checking the white paper, I saw extensive thought being put in the view regulators, especially in the United States, have on other stable coin projects. And you make very sure about the subtleties to keep in mind when marketing the product, or rather not marketing it. What was your way to assess this? And do you have, in a way, standing relationships into these echelons or whatever, to see how people from that side of the aisle would react to this proposal?
So I don't have any magic crystal ball or insight into the SEC or any other major US regulator that would I think nobody can really predict. It's very much a hope for better, prepare for the worst kind of a thing. I think, and that's really unfortunate, but that's the reality we live in. And I think currently, as far as I know, there is not a legal definition of a stablecoin in the U.S. law. I mean, there's very heavy legal blocks against even calling any crypto even a security. Gary Gensler and a lot of regulators, they will insist very loudly that they think it is, but they actually have very poor basis in the law for that, for asserting that. And there have been a couple of really important Supreme Court decisions recently that have really limited U.S. regulators' ability to just kind of assert things and then push the burden of proof onto the little guy to prove that they don't have jurisdiction over this. Because before 2022, U.S. regulators would just assert jurisdiction over. They would just say, this random thing, this puddle on your farm is, we at the Environmental Protection Agency have jurisdiction over it because it's a puddle, and that's like, wetlands rules. Or I'm serious. This stuff was like very common, and this was getting like more out of control for like 10 years, and then the Supreme Court really kneecapped that practice over the summer. And so I think that's actually part of why you see Gary Gensler and very crypto hawkish regulators now. They're much louder about throwing bombs in public, because their actual grounding in the law has actually gotten much worse. It's been very weakened. And so, but I think I would also say that what we're trying to do is not like a stablecoin. It is not like USDC or BUSD. Or now, if there were another proposal that came out and it said, okay, we're going to have USDC as our collateral, for example, then I would say, okay, if that's what you do, then whatever the successor to USDC is, then that's a stablecoin, because you're using a US dollar cash equivalent as your one-to-one collateral, and you're really no different from USDC. You're just Terra wrapped. So I call that the wrapped USDC approach, and like that would definitely be very safe, but it would also, there would be no use for it. There'd be no reason for anyone to use that over USDC, right? So yeah, the thought, Terra in its past versions, you could tell, if you understood it really well, you could tell that Do Kwon put a ton of thought into making the architecture of the protocol not just different from the stablecoin Luna to stablecoin dual token model and all that, but even how the currency peg is done by third-party agents. That's a key legal invalidation. That's a key legal defense against the idea that Terra should be regulated like a stablecoin, because in that case, it's not actually the protocol that is defending it. It's not some CEO somewhere who is making a decision to like defend the currency. It's something that he doesn't control. And so Do Kwon built Terra a lot of Terra's uniqueness revolved around how carefully built it was around both the law and its network architecture and everything, that it was just decentralized on all these other dimensions and kind of beyond the scope of stablecoin law. And that's something, at least that's how it seemed to me, and that those features, I think, made it very valuable and unique in the eyes of Terra's investors, institutional investors in the past. And I think they're worth preserving, because that gives you an independence with that and an ability to do things that you can't do if you are transacting in USDC or in BUSD.
Good. So again, trying to wrapping it up, if you would try to explain it to a 12-year-old how your proposal works, could you start an attempt at it, let's say?
All right. Yeah, I just realized you asked me that like 45 minutes ago, and I went in 27 other directions. Okay. You take existing network resources, you do a bunch of financial engineering, you move them around to launch a successor to USTC that is Bitcoin backed, this 60% Bitcoin backed. Then, to whatever extent possible, you also, and if the community supports it, you also give something back to the USTC holders that's material to them and kind of brings them back into the fold as well. And you probably do things with that extra LUNC that you'd have to mint, like you could auto stake it, you could lock it up for X number of months, you could do these various things that could prevent it from being dumped onto the market. That can all be controlled by the community. So you can definitely manage around that. You can manage around how much LUNC you want to give to USTC holders as sort of compensation for collapsing their debt, collapsing that bad debt. And finally, you do away with the 9.5 billion of bad debt. So the 9.8 billion USTC tokens that exist right now, that's like a bad debt. And it has a market cap of about $300 million. So call it 9.5 billion of bad debt. That 9.5 billion needs to be written off in one way or another. So it needs to go through the equivalent of a debt restructuring process. And so whenever you do a debt restructuring process in traditional finance, you basically, the debt holders get together in a room and they're like, okay, this business is completely screwed, like under its current debt load. It won't survive. Every employee will quit and we'll just have like empty buildings. So we need to like restructure the debt. So we all need to agree to take a big hit on our debt. And we need to get some more equity into the future of this business. If it recovers and takes off again, then we get something out of it. We get compensated for it in that way. So that's how any traditional finance debt to equity restructuring works. So that was kind of the template that I tried to apply to Terra Classic, and because we have so much bad debt that we need to burn away, we do need to. I mean, we're trying to burn 97% of it essentially through this process. So that's what we're trying to do. And
that's where
the protocol to kind of leave the past behind and have a functioning quasi stable coin again, and have a functioning like internal economy again.
And that's where the pushback is coming from the no minters saying don't, because they would actually be the ones take the hit.
Yeah, every LUNC holder would be taking that variable hit, whether that hit is 0 because they don't want to, they just don't want to underwrite it, or whether it's a few percent, or yeah, they would have to agree to that, and it might be that politically that part is just not doable, which to me would feel like a missed opportunity, but I don't. It's up to the community at the end of the day. So
how will the governance and decision process look like for the proposal from here on now moving forward? What are the next steps that need to be taken?
well, I think I know of at least 2 other credible proposals being made. I think one of them, I think Tobias Anderson is kind of heading up one of them. And I think that from what I know, and it could be different, but from kind of in earlier versions that I've discussed about, it seems to follow much more of an ample forth type of a model, from what I understand. And then I think there's also a proposal that might follow more of a wrapped USDC model. So those are kind of like the 2 other paths that I think this could take. And I think the community will vote, right? There's 700 billion or whatever amount LUNC that are staked across 83-ish validators, and so the validators will vote, and on Terra Classic, any community member can override the validators' vote, if they don't like the validators' vote. So really, everybody can just vote pretty normally, and that'll be the decision.
What is the best case scenario for you? And please also then go into what could go wrong. What other ways are
Best
there?
case scenario for my proposal or for me personally?
I would say for your proposal and the whole, let's say, Terra Rebel revitalization of the ecosystem.
I think the best case scenario for the community is that it picks the best idea, and that best idea becomes a very widely adopted quasi stablecoin that burns, restarts the two-way swap and burns trillions of LUNC in circulation. And so I think the business question that the community needs to decide is, what kind of a quasi stable coin is going to have the uniqueness and differentiation that will cause it to be widely adopted? Is it going to be something kind of like what UST was before, which is what I try to do in my proposal? Is it going to be something like an ample forth, which has a 0 chance, which requires very low collateralization and has but it's all, and has no chance of a death spiral, but also nobody wants to use it because it has these insanely tight capital controls? Or is it like a wrapped USDC type of idea, which is very safe, but is also not unique, and there'd be no reason to use it over USDC in general? So I think the community needs to make a cost benefit analysis of kind of, it needs to really have a question of what kind of a quasi stable coin does it want to go with, and then to what extent does it want to sort of rope in the USTC holders who, as opposed to kind of do what Do Kwon did and kind of write them off, which I think that did not play well publicly at all when he did it, and I don't think it would look good to people outside the Terra Classic community if we did the same thing.
What's the standpoint of VCs on this proposal and other competing proposals, or in general. So what I would be most interested in is like a map of the different factions that exist in this battle.
I'd say from my own conversations, I think the institutional investors, let's say, were very, very interested after staking was re-enabled, and I think they very aggressively sponsored sponsored the token. I think there was a lot of buying, but I think that did a 180 when the burn tax happened. And I think they said at that point, like, this will not deliver what people want. It'll break the network. This means that there will be like a new period of very high governance volatility, which means that if you're an dApp developer, you're not going to know like how is your dApp going to work economically, like if it's getting hit by these like unpredictable tax policy, and you're basically going to cause all the key ecosystem actors to like stay away until things settle down and rationalize. And I talked a lot, so I think the institutional side kind of left after the burn tax was clearly going to pass, and I don't think they would come back until that changes, because they would see this as very economically destructive, I think. And then you have like a very large retail holder base of people that bought Luna Classic before the crash. I'm sorry, bought it after the crash, who they're kind of newer to crypto in general, and very focused on LUNC and like what does a proposal do for LUNC, and they're not shedding a whole lot of tears over USTC holders, or they're like, well, that is it's a reasonable argument. It's like, well, they made their own bet, and it's not our problem if that they got run over in their own way. And then you have the people, I'd say, the legacy, the people who were involved in either UST or Luna before, and are still involved today. And I think that is a much smaller group that's like more sympathetic to the UST holders, and probably a lot more attentive to like what made the Terra stablecoin unique from other stablecoins in the first place. And so I feel like I'm kind of like a mix of that camp and institutional camp more. But I also think those are the two groups of people that are probably a little more like standoffish right now, and kind of waiting for policy to get cleared up, and waiting for, like, they want to invest in an ecosystem recovery story, right? They want to invest in a buildable ecosystem where top talent app developers want to come in. They know what they're getting. They're eager to build here. That's what a VC wants to do, because that means growing utility. That means growing everything. And they would figure, well, the growth will ultimately pay for all the current problems 10 times over if it's successful, as opposed to a much more like deflation centric approach that will reduce the supply at some rate, but it will also make the ecosystem very, very hard to build on while it's in progress. So if the deflation could be done in 3 or 6 months, because all the centralized exchanges help us, that would be a credible trade for the ecosystem to make. But if it's going to take 30 years instead of 3 months, then that probably means the crypto industry is going to pass us by very quickly and leave us in the dust while we're like waiting for supply to shrink. So that's kind of like the political high-level situation to me.
Mm-hmm. What are the most common questions that you get asked that we maybe didn't cover yet in this conversation?
I think the minting, so the whole minting side is huge, much louder than all the other ones. There are a lot of more intricate legal questions, but I'm trying to think of like, I can go look on my Twitter feed and see kind of the questions people left there.
Somebody was asking about a collaboration with Zarada.
So Zardar is Tobias Anderson. Yeah, I mean, I think if his system is some sort of, as I understand it, is some sort of upgrade of the capital control system, and there's no question that a bunch of upgrades need to happen on the capital control system because it didn't work the way it was supposed to in May. So yeah, there's no reason why what I'm doing is exclusive with what he's trying to do, but it sounds like based on some more recent messaging that he's made that he now sees this as a standalone system that does not need any further minting or anything. So I don't know. I'd have to kind of see his white paper and talk to him about it before I guess I have a complete understanding of that. And I think what I'm trying to do is a completely different path from the wrapped USDC approach. That's like philosophically just the opposite direction that I'm going in.
Now maybe more a question on you personally. What were the biggest learnings from all of your intense engagement with the community and with this proposal? What stood out to you the most?
Sorry, I laughed because is that real, Mia? The question from FatMan, is Alex actually Do Kwon wearing a prosthetic mask? No, it's definitely not. Sorry. What was your question? Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, question again before getting sidetracked by FatMan is your biggest learnings from your intense engagement with the Terra Rebels community and this proposal.
I learned an insane amount from Ed and Tobias about how like Cosmos networks work and how Tendermint consensus works and how all kinds of little pieces of like the inner plumbing of how Terra was supposed to work. So I think from an educational perspective, it was awesome. And I think from a community, I'm a very introverted guy by nature, and I'm not the most thick-skinned guy either. So it was also my first experience of like dealing with thousands of people and like with very, very different levels of understanding about what you're trying to do, right? And so just that's been an ongoing learning experience for sure. But it's been fun. There are definitely days where it's not fun, but overall it's a lot of fun.
What is the best way for people to follow you, what you're working on, and to engage with you directly?
I just say follow my Twitter account. It's kind of styled after my Discord handle from Terra Rebels. So it's _Lex_Forshaw at
underscore
TR, right?
Yeah. We have it also in the running band down there.
Yeah.
Okay. And
maybe I have a little time to keep going. I don't know how hard capped you are on time, but I could probably go for a few more minutes.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to open the floor, let's say, to comments from your side, questions or comments that you wanted to elaborate on.
You mean just like other closing thoughts kind of thing, or
yeah, like important things that you didn't mention already.
Oh,
which are important for the audience to know and to consider.
I said one thing. This is not really related to kind of like the politics right now, but it's one thing that I think is worth putting out into the public domain that I think is really interesting. Is a really interesting kind of learning experience for me was, so when Luna crashed and I lost, you know, a hurtful amount of money over it. I was probably the biggest hater of Do Kwon you could find anywhere, and
which is also backed by your publishing activity.
Yes.
Here on Stake Rewards, by the way.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And I think it was very interesting to watch as the parlay with Terraform Labs and Do Kwon, and I guess more indirectly, kind of went on. It was just quite constructive overall, I would say, on both levels, and I'd say does not fit the profile of a guy with a red note. In Do Kwon specifically, does not really fit the profile of a guy with a red notice out on him, and, you know, criminal mastermind, blah blah blah. I mean, my own communications with him have been pretty limited and pretty like very specific and businesslike. But I'd have to say they were all constructive. I'd have to say, and also, and as we were kind of cleaning up and fixing things internally, we found a lot of things that I know in a couple cases TFL and Do Kwon must have known about because they had published things about those things before. Things that could have been exploited very badly for like tens of millions of dollars that were not exploited, and other actions that they did that actually showed a special care to be like unexploitive, even when like the public perception of them was the opposite, and they didn't even really try to clear the public perception of it. And maybe there was just too much other stuff going on that they don't know. But so I think that's one sort of like piece of information that is maybe worth mentioning. I mean, we still have a very like extremely arm's length like distance from TFL and stuff, but I think a lot of individual TFL people have been really helpful to us in our efforts to kind of put the pieces back together. And it just does not fit the profile of a criminal organization, or even a criminal or criminal CEO on the run, from what we can tell. It almost, no, I don't think anyone's going to know, or like even be able to judge Kwon until like all his transactions across all the chains are mapped, and I don't know if that's even possible. But a part of me almost wonders if it's more of like a Carlos Ghosn situation than like Do Kwon was like when Terra blew up, he just embarrassed his country. And if you know Koreans, they're like the most ethno-nationalistic pride tribe in the world. And if you were in Do Kwon's position, you're just like, okay, like I just disgraced my country. I'm dead. Like, no matter, there's not substantive due process here that's going to be in play here. And maybe I'm better off kind of, I don't know, fighting in my defense from, wherever he is, as opposed to, and like having a lot more resources to reconstruct what that defense might look like. But I would say, I just think the whole kind of TFL constructiveness side of the story is a story that has not yet really been told. And I think it's worth talking about.
So after being vocal about it here on Stake Rewards, right now you are actually taking a much softer stance, and you are inviting also the public.
Yes, I am aggressively hedging those comments based on new information. new evidence. Yes.
One question from the audience here, which I think is good because it's very specific, is whether you have already spoken to the 3 major validators about this proposed plan of yours, as they have almost complete control over the voting power.
I've kind of put it out there. I mean, anybody knows where to find me, right? I think I'm in a couple different Discord servers, I think, with them. So yeah, there's a lot of politics going on, and I think if you're in their shoes, you've got to see all the credible ideas, and you've got to, it's hard for a validator to evaluate my idea until he's seen Zeradar, Tobias Anderson's idea, and the 1 or 2 other ideas that have had a lot of thought put into them. So, and maybe there are more that we don't know about yet, or that, so I think, yeah, if I would say it would feel too early for me to just like knock on their door and say, hey, like, where are your votes? Give me your votes. Like, I don't think that's the right thing for the community or the right call for a validator to do right now.
With the whole backstory of governance and staking with this instance, what would you say could the whole Terra story serve as a case study for? So what did we learn from this in terms of governance and staking?
I think that story is not yet written. I think Terra Classic is an amazing. It contains like the best and the worst. It's such an amazing encapsulation of like the best and the worst of everything in crypto, right? Like you had this Lehman Brothers of crypto event that just blew up. You had a founder who definitely looked a lot more like Elizabeth Holmes and a lot less like Carlos Ghosn. The guy who was smuggled out of Japan in a briefcase because he thought that the odds were stacked too high against him, and when he was being tried for corruption as the CEO of Nissan or whatever. You have that story. You have like these experts coming together from all over the world who, like Tobias and Ed Kim and less so myself, who had never met each other ever in real life, and start going through, picking up all looking at the wreckage and seeing how the wreckage can be reassembled into something that works again. You have this huge community coming together of like retail traders who are very new to crypto. I mean, this happens in any crypto ecosystem that gets meme momentum. You always have like this very diverse community that comes in, and you have people who are really well versed in how crypto works, and you have a lot of people who are very new to it or in it for the first time, and that becomes a huge education challenge and a communication challenge, and that gives rise to all kinds of politics and fighting stuff out in public, and so all the good and bad things that go with that. So I think, in terms of like what I've learned or taken away, or I just think it's an ongoing experiment in true mass decentralization. Basically, like 99% of these crypto chains are actually very centralized operations with this bogus, smokescreen of decentralization around them. And this is one where like the chain decentralized the hell out of itself with the hyperinflation to 6.9 trillion tokens from 1 billion, or actually it was like 800 million. So, and it's also one of the few kind of truly distributed systems. A lot a lot of cryptocurrencies, they kind of remain very concentrated in a pretty small number of holders' hands, and the number of cryptos that become true distributed systems is very small. So I just think it's a fascinating ongoing experiment in kind of what true decentralization looks like and what it can be harnessed to or directed towards to like build something really innovative that can work really well, or potentially not work well at all. Who knows?
So somebody from the community would like to know whether they can expect you to continue to support the community with this work, with your work.
I'll, as long as I have ideas that I think are do we just, oh, okay, I think I just lost you for a second there. I think as long as I have ideas that I think will boost the value of the token, I think I'll noisily be making them. And if I run out of those ideas and don't have much to offer the community anymore, then I should probably move on, right? But I think, yeah, as long as I think I'm value added to the conversation, I'll be a part of the conversation.
All right, let's
go ahead.
Let's see through. Maybe let's see through the other community questions here, and let's pick some 1, 2, 3, or 5, whichever you want to cover, and let's go over it. I would suggest.
Oh, you're talking about from my side. Okay, let's see.
Yep.
All right, give me a second to bring these up. Okay, I got here for Luna. Do you think it will be possible, instead of minting new LUNC, to fundraise by maybe bringing a small tax on validator commissions and rewards to go into a pool that will be in place until we reach the required amount? I would say no, that is not possible. That is, I mean, probably not, because the validators are the stakers and the validators are all paid out of the Oracle Rewards distributor with contract, which has a very specific amount of money in it. It does have the 300 billion or so LUNC, which is very important for any proposal that involves recapitalizing anything. But I would say, like, that's the pot of money that pays out stakers and validators. So my sense is that unless we go with a very limited stablecoin like thing that has small circulation, is BTC backed, and kind of leaves the USTC holders behind, I would say that is definitely not going to be enough money to make it happen. Let's see. Who else? Nope. What else? Lonk Arabic. Good morning, Alex. Can minting new LUNC be avoided? Yes, it could be avoided in certain scenarios of this proposal, but it comes with opportunity costs. So that's something that the community has to decide. What about seed funding from holders of USTC with different ratios from existing circulation? That I don't know how that could work. I think that I'd have to understand that question. Another guy says, how much USTC do you hold? It's like whatever dust from staking rewards that I got, like actual staking rewards on the chain, not staking rewards, staking rewards. It's tiny. It's probably like $10 US dollars worth or something. I'm not sure. what else? I'm looking, and there are way more comments in kind of the YouTube.
If all the proposals were put on a table, hypothetically, how would you sell yours to the community that it is the best option?
I'd say my idea takes what I think made Terra unique and makes it better and preserves the uniqueness that Terra has within the stablecoin and stablecoin-like market. And I would presume, based on what I've seen thus far, that I'm not going to say anything about those other proposals because I haven't seen them yet. But I would say, if you want kind of differentiation and uniqueness, which is ultimately what's going to drive adoption the most, I would say go with mine, and you'll have the most successfully adopted stablecoin like instrument that I think is ultimately gonna be the best investment for the community and ultimately deflate Luna Classic supply by far the most.
Yeah, maybe Alex, if you go on private chat, you can get all the questions there.
Thank you.
The comment section, then it's much more
a little bit
to the view. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So now the AMA question is opened up again.
Yes. Okay. Community question. Really short explanation why USTN is necessary over USTC for people who just tuned in. Creation of a new token seems sensitive to some people. So basically, in our original plans, we did want to work with USTC, with USTC. That was our default, and we did want to kind of preserve the whole that same token and the history as like a cautionary tale. But we decided that by doing USTC, it's a lot more legally complicated to kind of like take certain USTC balances from certain accounts and move them elsewhere. Even just collapsing the USTC supply by like 97%, that a lot of USTC holders felt like that was really unfair to them because they were basically not being given a vote on the decision. Whereas if we just went with a completely new token and we left everybody's USTC untouched, then it would be a completely voluntary process where like there would be no like a majority is unfairly overriding a minority. So it was really for like democratic legitimacy, I guess, that we went for, like, and also a lot less potential legal complications, that we decided that a new token would be better. Next question. If all the proposals were put on tip, okay,
we covered that already.
Covered that one. What are the others of this scenarios of this proposal where we can raise funds without minting? I'd say scenarios that basically write off USTC holders. I mean, it's that scenario. Community question. What if
maybe this one? What if USTC holders could optionally redeem USTC for USTN on-chain prior to a new mint? Could this possibly decrease the required dilution of LUNC? So LUNC.
I'd have to understand better how that would actually work. I can't right now. I don't understand the question well enough. Others. What else is in here? We go with Lunk, or I think Lunacy. Lunacy was a popular one earlier. Definitely not Lunц though. What else? Why on the day? Sorry, I'm just looking through some of these questions. Anything, Mia? Anything else from your side in terms of new questions, or do we think we've given a good rundown?
Yeah, so I've been following the questions here on the side already, and I think we covered about 60% of the questions, and now a lot of them are repeating.
Okay.
So some of these, I think we covered the basis of it.
Okay. Well, I think we could probably wrap it up then. I think for community members, if you felt like your question wasn't covered, just hit me up on Twitter. You can always ask your question directly to me on Twitter, and we'll look forward to continuing to follow this cage match, governance cage match. I think it's been fun so far, and I think I'm sure the community will ultimately decide what's best. So
a comment from my side. I would say that this whole case study is super interesting to analyze dynamics of different factions fighting for power, commercial benefit, but also mitigating risks from the regulatory and even, prosecution side in a war where staking, validation, and protocol governance is central. And for this basis, staking rewards is positioned there to drive this conversation and this whole story forward, and maybe to pull a plug for our staking summit that we are going to host at the 8th of November this year in Lisbon. These are one of the key story points and topics that we are going to cover there. It's going to be a full day event in person, Lisbon, in capital of Portugal. And if you haven't done so, please go and check out the summit on stakingrewards.com/summit. And I am your host, Marian Walter. And it's been a great pleasure to have you on the show, Alex, today. And until then, see you next time on Staking Mondays.
Thanks so much. Talk soon.
Cheers. Bye.